Coach, another win today, 48-14 over Wyoming. A tough Wyoming team. Coach Bull really has those guys playing hard from beginning to end and everywhere in between. Not often your team goes scoreless in the first quarter, even though they drove down to the 2-yard line. But when you got it going, they got going in a hurry.
Yeah, we were a little sluggish at the beginning and kind of in every phase, and who knows if it's a little bit of a hangover type of situation. But proud of how our guys competed through three-ish quarters. Got a ton of work to do, and luckily it's in the wake of a victory. So we'll take it and move on.
Offense, first of all, looked like it was in rhythm all the way. As I said before, drove down on its initial drive to the 2. Couldn't quite punch it in, but got the ball back and went right back to work. 41 straight points on all those possessions. Got in rhythm very quickly.
Yeah, that first drive was very unfortunate how that all took place. We had a couple guys that kind of couldn't kick out of some ankle tackles and that kind of thing, and then didn't do a very good job in execution-wise down in the red zone, in the tight red zone. Give them credit for that, but responded, like you said, pretty well.
And anytime you got the balance you have going. I mean, I look at it right there, 263 rush, 293 pass. It's tough for a team to defend, and you guys really spread the ball out to a lot of people.
We did. I haven't seen the total stats of how that went, but we wanted to get to kind of how they defend you. We had the potential to get a bunch of people involved. Marcus did a nice job of distributing there for a while, and Lockie came and did some good things. Had a couple drops when he was in there, but yeah, again, we just have to flip the page again and start getting ready for Washington State.
You talked about the efficiency. I look at both the quarterbacks combined, 25 of 31, which is pretty darn efficient. The way they went about it. 10 different receivers. You don't have that right there, but 10 different receivers caught a ball today. Johnny Lloyd got a touchdown catch today. But, again, that gets spreading it around tough for Wyoming really to key in on anybody.
Yeah, we had a really competitive situation at Whiteout this week. Had a bunch of guys doing some really good stuff in training and wanted to get those guys some chances. We had a couple misalignments that were penalized in the first half that we need to clean up by young guys. But overall, yeah, did a nice job, and it was great for Johnny to score there. We thought he was gonna get a chance to score on a play earlier, and they twisted their coverage. But just a guy who's comes to, it's just like on the hoop court, you can see his smiling face. He does that every day in practice, and it was great to see that result in a touchdown for him.
And your depth gets tested again at the offensive line. Jake Fisher goes out, Pearson comes in, and guys just they're ready to play, it looks like. I mean, they've got to be ready at all the time.
Absolutely. And as I said at halftime, is we expect those people to come in and play better. If Jeff's in at quarterback, we want perfection, and that's how we started out in fall camp. And when those guys come in here, we expect them to be great. There's nobody's a year, nobody's a freshman or a sophomore or junior anymore. They're if they're in there, they're the number one person.
Defense gave up yards at times, a few pops here and there that Wyoming had, but at the end of the day, 14 points is what counts, and some really timely turnovers, takeaways, a couple of interceptions by Eric Dargan.
Yeah, Dargan made a couple great plays again. He's been a guy who's been doing that all camp, and just some very frustrating misfits there in the first half on springing some long runs, but they, like you said, did a decent job of rallying in the red zone. And creating, had the fumble, the almost fumble, and then a couple of picks, and so good on the turnover ratio again today.
Any specific adjustments at halftime defensively that you made? I mean, yardage-wise, held them down to quite a bit less.
Not a ton. Again, I think it was just everybody settling down and doing their job. It was a lot like last week of we just misfit some things, had the quarterback sacked a couple times, had coverage, and didn't make a play on the ball. They made a couple great plays on the sideline, but we kept playing.
Non-league games out of the way now, 3-0, heading to Washington State. Tough place to play. The Cougars struggled a little bit earlier, but doesn't matter. It's Pac-12 play, tough place to play. Your thoughts about heading into the Pac-12 season?
We'll be excited for the next game. I know that our guys did, like I said, a decent job of shaking the hangover from last week. And now it's, definitely on a conference play, and we're right where we want to be in terms of being 3-0, but nowhere near where we want to be for the long term.
And now the benefits of an 11 a.m. game. You may be home by 3 o'clock. I don't know if these guys are going to let you out of here.
We're going to have a limit.
Either way, nice to get out of here, Coach. Congratulations with the big victory here today. 48-14 over Wyoming. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Jorgie. Appreciate it.
All right, Jerry, back up to you.
All right, again, Coach Helfrich will be available again tomorrow at 5, so don't have to ask them all today, right here with the microphone.
Coach, over here. What were your emotions when you saw Marcus get airborne near the goal line?
My emotions were, was he protecting the ball and was it a touchdown? We have some very strict guidelines about reaching the ball. And so we were just joking about that in the locker room. We'll go to the videotape on what is his aftermath. But that was, tremendous play. He did a good job. It looked like initially protecting the football. We try to hammer those guys on only reaching the ball on fourth down or it's, last play type of situations. And that was pretty athletic play.
Is there any pause though about him getting injured doing that type of play?
You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't sit there and go, hey, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. You just have to go out, and the only way you can control that in any way is by the play that's called. But the way that he plays, the dynamic nature that of his play, how he likes to improvise, we can't. That's one of our biggest strengths.
This side, right here.
Mark, you touched on it a minute ago, but
Excuse me.
Pearson and Crosby at the tackle positions, how did you think they fared against Wyoming in the second half especially?
Okay, and we'll look at the videotape, but they did okay. It wasn't so much those guys. There were some issues we had some issues in protection and in the run game that weren't them. And I know there's a few plays here and there where we can get better, but that's for everybody. Everybody's going to flip this and get better.
Over here, AJ.
Coach Charles Nelson, I'm tremendous on special teams, tremendous on punt return, and not today, but other days. Ever consider him on defense because he can do so many things?
As Coach Neal feeds you that question, he's been talking about that for long. I don't know if you saw he had a block on the safety as well. That was a huge collision. Charles is a heavy hitter for such a little guy in stature, and again has a huge future ahead of him. Yes, the defensive coaches have tried to recruit him and little player to be named later swaps and stuff that have been brought up during the course of the weeks.
With that play by Marcus diving into the end zone, what does that do for an offense is when they see their quarterback laying out like that?
Well, that they would do anything for Marcus. Whatever he asked them to do, they would do it, and they'd ask for instructions from him. He's just a special guy. He has the credibility to demand and ask anything and everything, and is a guy that we would follow to the end.
Mark,
As long as he doesn't reach the ball. Yes.
in a game like this, how much do you factor in leaving Marcus in the game to help him with his numbers for a possible Heisman?
Zero. We talked about it for our team for the long term and took him out. If the situation would have been different with the score at all, that probably would have changed our substitution pattern. But this is about we, us, and our. And the guy that would be the first and foremost in that camp would be Marcus.
Coach Frost is in the back. Hayden.
Coach, your thoughts on Eric Dargan's performance today and then kind of early on in the season so far?
He's been exactly how he practices, and that's what's amazing about Dargan. He's had a ton of picks in practice, very similar to the kind of little tip play that he had today. He's done that 20 times in practice, which is not good for the quarterbacks, but he's been spectacular in terms of how he's trained, how he's led those guys. He and Efo have done a nice job with those guys, and had a couple huge field flipping plays today. Hadn't scored yet though.
Gary.
Mark, you mentioned coming off the big win last week and the early start today. Was it a little difficult, a little unusual, just playing so early?
Maybe. Whether it's early or whatever, that's what we're in the business of constantly, is fighting human nature. The human nature is you're the worst team in America, then this week you're the greatest team in America, and you're going to win by 100. And we have to fight all that noise, all that chatter, which in this day and age is impossible to ignore, impossible to not be influenced by that to some degree. But that's, again, where we don't ask our guys to be normal in anything.
Coach, giving up 14 points is one thing, but you gave up a lot of yards. They had real good balance. Their third downs, I think they were 5 of 6 to start. They were doing some stuff against your defense. How concerned are you about your defense moving forward?
I'm concerned about everything. We could have played a lot better on offense, could have played a lot better in special teams, and defensively we need to improve as well. And so many of those things, when a guy misfits a gap, it's a 50-yard gain. That's not a systematic breakdown. That's one assignment, and everybody wants to make it this huge deal, and we'll get that corrected and move forward.
What kind of lessons can be gained in the back here for you guys, having two quieter first quarters the last couple of weeks and kind of learning to stay patient and eventually find your success?
It's a 60-minute game, you know, and it's the 48-14 was the final, and we got a bunch of guys in especially offensively, defensively as well. Got a ton of guys, a bunch of reps, and that will pay dividends going forward. And we don't, you know, again, we're not concerned with point differential or statement or whatever. We want to win and move forward.
Hey, Mark, right here. They had talked about in the first two quarters, Wyoming.
Although we don't like getting shut out. Go ahead.
Wyoming was very efficient on their third downs in the first quarter. I'm not sure what the second quarter was, but that Dargan interception, Wyoming's coming to driving down. They're still in the game. It was a one possession game there. Just how much does that interception like that take maybe the wind out of their sails when they're just trying to keep up with you guys?
Turnovers are huge. You know, it's other than the score, it's the number one determiner of winning and losing in college football, and that's huge. That's where it's not so much the systematic drive; it's the points, it's the turnovers, it's all those things that really determine winners and losers.
We have time for a couple more in the back.
Todd has a tea time.
Coach, non-conference schedule is finished. You're going into Pac-12 play now. What did you get from the non-conference schedule? Did you accomplish what you wanted to at this point? I mean, 3-0 obviously, but where do you see improvement necessary?
Everywhere, you know, and again, everywhere. We need to throw a little bit better, catch a little bit better, protect, run when we want to run, throw when we want to throw. Special teams, we have a ton of stuff that we can improve upon. Defensively, a ton of stuff we can improve upon. But that's, again, in the wake of a 3-0 start, and that's what matters the most. And we have a bunch of guys that are willing and able and excited to improve.